All right, here we go. Let's get into these hidden codes and these hidden records. So it starts with a place called Ebla, bearing the name Eber or Ibar in tablets in Ur of Chaldea. All right. So that place called Ibar, that actually goes into the word Hebrew. And these inscriptions are inscribed. So we're going to very, 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 very early place. So we're going to go from the beginning, then we're going to go towards the present. So this is the Adam and Eve cylinder, as it's called. And this is a seal. The actual seal is what we're looking at. Not a copy, it's the original. And it's dated to 2200 to 2100 BC. We see the snake, two people there, the tree. We know the story of Genesis. The resemblance is right there. So, and then moving on a little bit further, we go into 2000 BC. So this is the Akkadians, also called Sumerians. And it's inscribed in inscription, the black-headed people. So keep in mind, all people in that region have black hair. So it's not talking about hair. So in a Sumerian inscription, King Shulgi described himself as the king of the four quarters, the pastor of the black-headed people. So he's inscribed as being, in the inscriptions that they found, he's described as being the pastor of the black-headed people in the Eblite third dynasty of Ur of Chaldea. It's in between 2029 to 1982 BC, around the time when Abraham was still a boy. Alright, so let's check this out here. So the Eblite Empire was destroyed, named Ebla, during 2300 BC, century BC. Alright. It was then rebuilt, being inscribed in records of the third dynasty of Ur, the second Ebla, a continuation of the first, ruled by a new royal dynasty inscribed Ebla. So this new royal dynasty is still Ebla. The old, they carbon dated basically the old inscriptions there, it's Ebla. And the new Ebla, the continuation, is also Ebla, but it also has the inscription Ur of Chaldea. And that, which is why we have Abraham, when he's born, it's Ur of Chaldea. And he's also called a Hebrew, which goes to the word Ibar. So let's get Genesis 10 and 21. Unto Shem also, the father of all the children of Eber, the brother of Japheth, the elder, even to him were children born, Eblite. So has many inscription texts bearing the name Eber. So as we can see that this city was named after Eber. That's why Abraham was called Hebrew after the city of Eber. They're synonymous. But he was also in a place called Ur of Chaldea. Alright, so that's the history on that. Amorites took over Ur of Chaldea, the Mesopotamia, around 1810 to 1750 BC under King Hammurabi. So this is when the takeover happened. And this is when, so we have Ur of Chaldea now. So let's go into the Amorites. go into the Canaanites. It's Genesis 10 and 15. And Canaan begat Sidon, his firstborn, and Heth, and the Jebusites, and the Amorites, and the Girgashites. So those are the sons of Canaan. So Ham was dark, but something happened to his son Canaan, who was also a son of Ham. So let's see. So this is Genesis 36, speaking of Esau mixing with a group of Canaanites called Horites. So we're dealing with the Canaanites. So we have a group of people called Horites. And when you read Genesis 36, the top part, it mentions a Canaanite. But that same Canaanite is called a Horite. So we see that these Canaanites had a group of people and they called themselves Horites. Genesis 36 is a good read to see that. So let's go on to the word Horite. This is the encyclopedia of Bible study tools. And we see here that more correctly reads Horite instead of Hivite. And you can read over this here. Let me see. Hor or Horite has sometimes been explained to mean cave dweller. It more probably, however, denotes the white race. And we know that Esau mixed heavily, very heavily in Mount Seir with the Horite people. So the conclusion is obvious on that. So let's look at Horite, the meaning of it. It means cave dweller. As we saw there, it said it more denotes the white race. And also the Mount Seir. Now, the interesting thing about Mount Seir, Seir was actually a Horite, Canaanite. When Esau took over Mount Seir, it became synonymous with Esau. That's why we see there in the latter times. So now, here's what the Egyptians had to say about the Horites. They're called Amaru in the Hieratic, and the Papyrus Harris, an Egyptian record. So here's the record right here. A camp was set in one place in Amaru. They, the sea people, desolated its people, and its land was like that which had never come into being. The second relates that the prisoners were assigned to strongholds or garrisons. And it's cut out, brought them, sea people, as captives to Egypt, like the sands of the shore. I settled them in strongholds, bound in my name. Numerous were their classes, like 100,000s. So there were many of them. Another part of the inscription of the Papyrus Harris, same document. King circles his Horite regions and his Setite regions. Men is cut out. King circles the Horite regions. He invades DN. Looks like some of that is cut out. The Setite regions, that part's cut out. King is bidden to go to give command to the region of Horus, of Set, and of Osiris. That part's cut out. The region of Geb, that of Horus, that of Set, and the field of rushes praise King. The regions of Horus. Alright? Those of Set and the field of rushes praise King. So we see that Horus is synonymous with the Horites. And we know that a lot of different people traveled in and out of Egypt. So the Egyptians may have taken on some of the various people's cultures who traveled in, such as Horus, which is synonymous with the Horite. And this document, the Papyrus Harris, was made well over 3,000 years. So, these are pictures within the Papyrus Harris. Alright, within this same place is this picture right here, this document. And it's these Caucasian looking images of Egypt's depiction of the Horites in Papyrus Harris. So as you see, it bears witness with the same definition that the Bible gives. So, we dealt with the record. Now, let's see a little more of it. This is Amorite chief of Kadesh as a white skin and a light red brown eyes and hair. So here's the commentary of McNair in this document here. Okay, so we're dealing with the 18th dynasty. So McNair then says the Egyptian heads identify as Amorites were really Jews, not Amorites. But the Bible says that the Amorites weren't Jews, they were Canaanites. But McNair corrected the learned seance on this point, who said the opposite. McNair insisted that no matter what the Egyptians said, who drew the reliefs and seance, thought the Amorites were descendants of Ham through his son Canaan, and were dark complected like all of Ham's descendants. So he's insisting that the Amorites had to have really been dark skinned no matter what the Egyptians said. Therefore, it follows that the Amorites could not be white as the Egyptians portrayed them. No, according to McNair, the Amorites were actually black. So, McNair thinks he knows better over 3,000 years than the actual Egyptians who were witnesses and who probably made the release themselves and met them. Yeah, that's a fail. It's definitely a fail. So I'll go with the eyewitnesses. But here's what some of Canaan's sons being white exposes. Let's check that out. So this is Genesis 9:25. And he said, "Cursed be Canaan." So, when most people in the Bible were cursed, what usually happened to them? Well, let's look at what the records say. So here's what the Babylonians had to say about these Horite, Amorite sons of Canaan. So this is the old Babylonian period inscription. Describes South Mesopotamia in the early period about 2000 to 1600 BC. So all these things we're giving, they're unbiased. We're going to let the records just speak for themselves. So it says, the Amorite, he is dressed in sheepskins. He lives in tents in wind and rain. He doesn't offer sacrifices. Armed vagabond. In steep, he digs up truffles and is restless. He eats raw meat. Lives his life without a home. And when he dies, he is not buried according to proper rituals. So the Amorite, another Canaanite people, he's always dressed in sheepskins. So, let's look at this here. Let's really look at this here. It says that he lives in tents. And with wind and rain, he doesn't offer sacrifices. So, would this person seem cursed because he does things a little off, a little different. He eats raw meat. Something to think about. It's not very humane to eat raw meat. You should cook your meat. So now, this is one of these earliest form of clothing made from goat or sheep wools and meant to be worn around the waist like a skirt. It is recognizable by its fringe detailing. So we see this, and it's made from goat or sheep's wool, and we see that the Amorites wore sheep's wool. Would you look at that? See? These are also Caucasian looking people. Okay? These particular people would not be Edomites. These would be Canaanites. The only people who wore conicals, sheepskin, in ancient Canaan and Sumer were these Caucasian-looking people. This is how they are depicted by the Babylonians. So back again the old Babylonian period inscription describes South Mesopotamia in the period about 1600 BC. The Amorite, he is dressed in sheep's skins. So those were Amorites, blue eyes and all. And their white skin, their hair, clothes, So, 3 bear witness. So that shows you who the Canaanites were. And then also when you look up certain things, now you kind of know when you look up the Sumerians, and when you also look up the guy who was the pastor of the black-headed people, a lot of the Amorites who took over and started ruling over the black-headed people, those were not even Shemitic people. So if there were 2 groups of people living there, that would deduce if those were Hamitic people, the only people that would be left to be the Shemitic people would be the black-headed people. And those people who didn't dress in sheep's clothing, because it was so outlandish that they dressed like that the Babylonians had to take knowledge of it in that time. So when we look up other inscriptions, we see how they were dressed. Alright? So, now we're moving on to these tablets. They're called Amarna tablets. So this letter was written by Abdi Hebeh, the ruler of Jerusalem. The letters from Jerusalem, written as Jerusalem, and Amarna text, are from a Canaanite Amorite who ruled, named Abdi Hebeh, and he wrote these to Akhenaten, king of Egypt. So these are the actual carved inscriptions in these tablets. And they're dated of 1404 and in between 1340 BC. So here's what it says. May the king, my lord, know that I am unable to send a caravan to the king, my lord. For your information, as the king was placed his name in Jerusalem forever, he cannot abandon it, the land of Jerusalem. Say to the scribe of the king. So that also shows that Jerusalem has some history on it, because here we are hearing the mentioning of the word Jerusalem, and this is old. Okay. My lord, message of Abdi Hebeh, your servant. I fall at your feet. I am your servant. Present eloquent words to the king. My lord, I am a soldier of the king. I'm always yours. So So when we see in the papyrus hairs, those same Amorites were visiting the Egyptian, and it looks like the Egyptians, they awarded the Amorites with this land. So now let's see here. This is Joshua 10:1. Now it came to pass when Adonizedek, king of Jerusalem, had heard how Joshua had taken Ai. So we see that those words, Adonizedek, kind of similar to the other one. Remember that we're dealing with two different languages. We're dealing with the Egyptian, the Hieratic. We're dealing with the Akkadian. And then we're also dealing with the Hebrew. And then coming to the Bible, we'll, translate it not even directly to English, Latin first, So let's keep all that in mind with the different terminologies of that man. So it says Joshua had taken Ai and had utterly destroyed it. And he had done to Jericho and her king, so he had done to Ai and her king. And now the inhabitants of Gibeon had made peace with Israel, and were among them, and they feared greatly, because Gibeon was a great city, as one of the royal cities, and because it was greater than Ai. So now, in order for this city, Gibeon, to be a royal city, it would have to be brother to Ai or Jerusalem, part of the royal family. It only makes sense. So if we see here, this is kind of a big situation that happened here. We have a big switch up. This is a major event right here. We have Gibeon, who was once going for those Amorites. Now they're teaming up with Israel, right? So let's get a little more of this. And all the men thereof were mighty. Wherefore Adonizedek, king of Jerusalem, sent unto Hoham, king of Hebron, unto Param, king of Jarmuth, and unto Japhia, king of Lachish, and unto Debir, king of Elgon, saying. So this is part of the chapter 10 of Joshua in our Bible. So now this is the inscription. Let's match it up. This is the Amarna tablets. It says, "Let the king my lord be aware that my younger brother has rebelled against me, and has entered Mahuzu, and has given over his 2 hands to the leader of the Apiru, who since," kind of cut off there, "Anna is at war with me. Take care of your land." So we see a very similar thing. We see the younger brother. We see another royal city turned over and joined the Apiru. Okay. Again, keep in mind this is Akkadian. So Apiru is synonymous with the word Abiru. We're going to go into that as well. So this is Gibeon is a brother city to Jerusalem, joined Joshua. So this confirms Joshua. We're going to go into some more things that confirm Joshua. This is Heber has rebelled against the king, his lord, seeing that as far as I'm concerned, neither my father nor my mother put me in this place, but the strong arm of the king brought me into my father's house. Why should I, of all people, commit a crime against the king, my lord? Consider Jerusalem. This neither my father nor my brother have gave me. The strong hand is cut off. Words in between. Arm of the king gave it to me. Consider the deed. This is the deed of Melchilud, and the deed of the sons of Labayu, who have given the land of the king to the Apiru. Alright? We got people side with us, right? So that's going on with Joshua. So let's check this one out. This is, behold, Jabazah was slain in the city gate of Shiloh. So this is the inscription. I'm not actually reading, but we're talking about Shiloh. This is in this inscription. The king did nothing, behold, the servants who were joined to the Apiru smote Zemrad of Lachish, and Hadad was slain in the city gate of Shiloh. The king did nothing. Why has he not called them to account? So we see that the Apiru, all these people, they smote Lachish. So now let's see what Joshua says. This is Joshua 10:33. Then Horam, king of Gezer, came up to help Lachish, and Joshua smote him and his people until he had left him none remaining. A direct parallel. Let's check out more. This is Joshua 18:1. And the whole congregation of the children of Israel assembled themselves together at Shiloh. We just heard about Shiloh. And set up the tabernacle of the congregation there, and the land was subdued before them. Remember how the Apiru, they wiped everybody else out there, and they took over Shiloh? Here we see here, they set up the tabernacle, and they subdued everybody. The inscription, the Bible, same account. And now, as for Jerusalem, if this land belongs to the king, why is it not of concern to the king, like Hazutu, Jintigermel belongs to Tagi, and men of Gentu are the garrisons of Bet Sanu? Are we to act like Labayu when he was giving the land of Shechem to the Apiru? So we're going to look at these parallels, y'all, because again, we're not only giving inscriptions, but we're giving the circumstantial evidence, and then we're going to hone in on who the Hebrews are, but we're going to identify dates and match it up. That's why we're doing this, right? So we have Joshua 21 and 21. For they gave them Shechem. We just see that they gave Joshua Shechem. Now we're seeing in Joshua that they gave them Shechem. Same event. With her suburbs in Mount Ephraim to be a city of refuge for the slayer, and Gezer with her suburbs. Now, Hipiru, and Apiru. It's the phonetic equivalent to the Akkadian. Hipiru are the same word. They're phonetically exactly the same word. So the parallels show the Hebrews are the Hipiru. The Hebrew. Okay? Because Hipiru and Apiru goes back to the word Eber. So it says, and now as for Jerusalem, if this land belongs to the king, why is it not of concern to the king, like Hazatu, Gente Kermel belongs to Tagi, the men of Gentu, and the garrisons of Bitsanu? Are we to act like Lab Ayu when he was giving the land of Shechem to the Apiru? I gotta read that again. So now, behold, Bazu was slain in the city gate of Shiloh. The king did nothing. Behold, the servants who were joined to the Apiru smote Zemrada of Lachish, and Hadad was slain in the city gate of Shiloh. The king did nothing. Why has he not called them to account? All right. So we see. So I want us to really look at this here. See that? The parallel. Alright, so this is another inscription here. May the king my lord know that the chief of the Abiru has invaded the lands which your God has given me, but I have attacked him. Also let the king know, my lord, know that none of my allies have come to my aid. It is only I and Abdiheb who fight against the Abiru chief. And we know that's Joshua. So this is Joshua 13:1. Now Joshua was old and stricken in years, and Yahweh said unto him, Thou art old and stricken in years, and there remaineth yet very much land to be possessed. This is the land that yet remaineth, all the borders of the Philistine, and all the Gershiu, from Sihor, which is before Egypt, even to the borders of Ekron, northward, which is counted to the Canaanites, 5 lords, the Philistines, the Gazathites, the Ashdothites, the Ashkelonites, the Gittites, the Ekronites, also the Evites. From the south, all the land of the Canaanites, and the Mirah, that is beside the Sidonians, unto Ephek, to the borders of the Amorites, and the land of Gibeonites, and all Lebanon, toward the sun rising from Baal Gad, under Mount Hermon, unto the entering into Hamath, all the inhabitants of the hill country from Lebanon unto Mesrephoth Mayim, and all the Sidonians. Them will I drive out from before the children of Israel. Only divide thou it by lot unto the Israelites for an inheritance, as I have commanded thee. So I just want to get really get into the whole story, and see how it matches. That they subdued everybody. There was more lands to conquer. They were just conquering everybody. And as you can see, we see the guy, the Amorite, he's described to the king in the inscriptions. They took everything. And now, we're reading in Joshua, they took everything. Let it be known what Melchelu and Shawardatta did to the land of the king, my lord. They sent troops of Gezer, troops of Gath. The land of the king went over to the Abiru. It's a done deal. This is Joshua 11:22. There was none of the Anakims left in the land of the children of Israel. Only in Gaza, Gath, and Ashdod there remained. So, the children of Eber are Hebrew, both meaning, check this out, they both mean beyond region or to cross over. They have the same phonetic meaning. So we know we're talking about the same situation and we're talking about the same people. So now this is Joshua 5 and 6. We're going to move forward. For the children of Israel walked 40 years in the wilderness till all the people that were men of war, which came out of Egypt, were consumed, because they obeyed not the voice of Yahweh, unto whom the Lord sware that he would shew them the land which Yahweh swore unto their fathers, that he would give us a land that floweth with milk and honey. And I say Yahweh because that's the Hebrew word. So this is, and for respect, this is Joshua 5 and 6. And so what we're seeing here is that it's talking about that they wandered for 40 years before that conquest that we just saw. So we were just talking about the conquest. So to go back to the Hebrews in Israel, we got to go about 40 years. We're around 1400, maybe late 1300 BC, right? So let's go about 40 years back to see what we get. Because Israel was in the wilderness for 40 years until the conquest of Canaan, as shown in these ancient records of Joshua. Minus 40 years takes us to Thutmose III, king of Egypt. So Pithom, this name comes from Hebrew Pithom, which was taken from the late Egyptian name Pi Autumn, House of Autumn. So House of Autumn, Pithom, they are synonymous. Exodus 1:11. Therefore, they did set them taskmasters to afflict them with their burdens, and they built for Pharaoh treasure cities, Pithom and Ramses. So let's identify this place. House of Autumn, which is translated as Pithom, tent poles, columns, festival temples, Thutmose III. We see the dates there, 1479 BCE, sandstones, mud brick, paint, and then it gives the information on it. So this would have been made by the Hebrews. So this is Exodus 1:14. And they made their lives bitter with hard bondage, and mortar and brick in all manner of service. So it's brick and mortar in the field, and their service wherein they made them serve was with rigor. Another thing to note, in the scriptures where it talks about the plagues, the firstborn dies. Thutmose III outlived his firstborn son. His firstborn died. So anybody who looks into the records of Thutmose III, check that out. He did in fact die. Circumstantial evidence. Wow. So now, let's identify Moses. All around this time, everything is set. So now, this statue depicts a man around 1518 BC. He was alive during Thutmose III, having the title Senenmut. He holds Princess Nefertiti's daughter of Hatshepsut in his lap. In one of his tombs, it shows his parents as non-royal. So he was accepted by Hatshepsut, who brought him into Egyptian lifestyle. So she brought him in. He was a regular guy. So this is a column of hieroglyphs. It is inscribed along the hem of Senenmut's skirt. It reads, an inscription there, Chief Steward of the Princess Nefertiti, Senenmut. We see the excavations information. And we see that this is the reign of Hatshepsut, 1473, 1458 BC. Now, there's a column inscription where Senenmut, he actually claims to be the chief architect of Hatshepsut's work at Deir el Behari. But it's kind of interesting because we see that Hatshepsut, that name that she has, that's actually her title. And Senenmut actually is his title. And when we go into this work where he claims he is the chief architect, we see his personal name. Let's check it out. So this is the mortuary temple of Hatshepsut at Deir el Bahari. It's a French decoder of hieroglyphs. Was not alone in feeling confused by the obvious conflict between words and pictures. And this is what he's saying when he found these excavations when he went there. If I felt somewhat surprised at seeing here, as elsewhere throughout the temple, the inscription, check this out. And this, I'm putting this together. He didn't actually make this claim, but check out how this adds up. This is how we show this is unbiased. Renowned Maurice, adorned with all the insignia of royalty, giving place to this Amnendi. So we know that's Hatshepsut's personal name. That's already known. But now we're seeing his personal name. because he's the one who said that he made this as well. So now we see the personal name of Semnimnut, the architect of the mortuary temple of Hatshepsut at Deir el Bahari as Maurice by name. Maurice. That was his name. That was his personal name. Here we see Senimut reveals his personal name as Maurice in his own writing. So Maurice would not be related to Thutmose III. These two different people. This is this man we're looking at right here. This is Maurice. So let's get the etymology of this word, Maurice. So the etymology of it is former large lake of northern Egypt. So he's named after a body of water. Interesting. From Greek, Maurice. From Egyptian, Mer, big lake. From Mer, lake, big. So now, Exodus 2:10, and the child grew, and she brought him unto Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. And she called his name Moses. And she said, because I drew him out of the water. So here we see that Maurice is synonymous with the name Moses because they both mean body of water. They involve water. So they mean the exact same thing, y'all. Now, from the hieratic Egyptian to Hebrew would then translate Maurice to Moses. Now, let's look at the map. And let's look at the biblical narrative. And let's see how this is possible. Now we know, let's look at Goshen, right? Goshen, where the Hebrews dwell. Now, we see the moment he puts the baby in the little river right there. And then it lands into the pool, near the pool, the edge of the lake. And the name of this lake, actually to this day, is Morse Lake. Where did they get that name from? So this is Genesis 45:10. And thou shalt dwell in the land of Goshen, and thou shalt be near unto me, thou and thy children, and thy children's children, and thy flocks, and thy herds, and all that thou hast. Exodus 9:26. Only in the land of Goshen, where the children of Israel were, was there no hail. So we see that the Israelites, from time memorial, they dwelt in Goshen. So here we see when Moses' mother put him in the basket, that's where he would have ended up, in the edge. Right there, the river leads right to Morris Lake, which is where they would have found Moses, which is why they named it that name. Exodus 2:3. And when she could no longer hide him, she took for him an ark of bulrushes and dubbed it with slime and with pitch, and put the child therein. And she laid it in the flags by the river's brink. And his sister stood afar off to it what would be done to him. And the daughter of Pharaoh came down to wash herself at the river. And her maids walked by the river's side. Now the river's brink. River's brink? The brink of what? Another land? No, the pool. The location matches perfectly. The circumstantial evidence works perfectly. And the maidens walked along the riverside, and when she saw the ark along the flags, she sent her maid to fetch it. Exodus 2:10. And the child grew, and she brought him unto Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son, and she called his name Moses. And she said, because again I drew him out of the water. And the lake, the water, is named Morris Lake. And Moses is synonymous with that. So we've identified Moses. Now another clear parallel. This is powerful. We just identified Moses in Egypt by inscription, by record, not commentary. So this is Senenmut, greatest of the great. It's inscription. It says, I was the greatest of the great in the whole land. I was the guardian of the secrets of the king in all his places. This is Acts 7:22. And Moses was learned in all the wisdom of the Egyptians, and was mighty in words and in deeds. So I will propose these clear parallels cannot be ignored. They're very, very, very clear parallels that they should be addressed, and we're addressing them. So now, the plagues of Egypt, Ipoh Papyrus. Now the oldest actual record of the Ipoh is dated 1570 to 1069, which is a broad timeline. Now you're going to get commentary that it's way older, it's 2000 BC, 3000. There's no even minute pieces of the Ipoh Papyrus that even dates that far. It's just commentary. So let's just stick with record. So what we have is a record, and there's a broad timeline. So now, let's hone in on that timeline, and let's find the actual date. So let's go to another record. It's an inscription from Saqqara tomb reliefs decoration called the Derisi fragment. It gives a list of scribes, one of those being a man named Ipoh. And we see the Ipoh Papyrus is named after him. So this is his writing. So this Saqqara tomb inscription is dated 1400 BC, showing Ipoh lived at the same time as Thutmose III and Maurice Senenmut. So we're all around the 1400, late 1300s. It's all around the same time, y'all. It's all going around the same time. So let's see what happened around this time. So let's get a parallel. This is Exodus 12:30. And Pharaoh rose up in the night, he and all his servants, and all the Egyptians. And there was a great cry in Egypt, and there was not a house where there was not one dead. And he called for Moses and Aaron by night, and said, Rise up, and get you forth from among my people, both ye and the children of Israel. Go and serve Yahweh, as ye have said. So we're like, get it, hey, y'all running amok over here. I can't take it no more. You know what I mean? So they left. The Israelites is like the Most High was really putting it on Egypt. So this is from the Ipoh Papyrus. Let's see what it says. Indeed, poor men have become owners of wealth, and he who could not make sandals for himself is not possessor of riches. Indeed, men's slaves. Did the Egyptians have slaves? Yes, they did. Here we have right here. Their hearts are sad, and magistrates do not fraternize with their people. When they shout, indeed, hearts are violent. Pestilence is throughout the land. Blood is everywhere. Death is not lacking. And the mummy, then, and so on and so forth. So this is Exodus 8:28. And Pharaoh said, I will let you go, that ye may sacrifice to Yahweh your God and the wilderness. Only ye shall not go very far away. Entreat for me. So now it's put in there Yahweh, but let's see if they real familiar with Yahweh. Let's check it out. This is Exodus 6:1. Then Yahweh said unto Moses, Now shalt thou see what I will do to Pharaoh, With a strong hand shall he let them go, and with a strong hand shall he drive them out of his land. And God spake unto Moses, and said unto him, I am Yahweh, and I appeared unto Abraham, unto Isaac, and unto Jacob, by the name God Almighty. But by my name Yahweh was I not known to them. So they didn't really know about that name, like his actual name. So let's check out this parallel right here. Check this out. It's the iPower Papyrus. Behold, he who did not know his God now offers to him with incense to another who is not known to him. So that's a clear parallel right there. So this is Exodus 3:21. And I will give this people favor in the sight of the Egyptians. And it shall come to pass that when ye go, ye shall not go empty, but every woman shall borrow of her neighbor, and of her that sojourneth her house, jewels. So the women are taking the jewels, the silver, the gold, raiment, and ye shall put them on your sons and upon your daughters, and ye shall spoil the Egyptians. Indeed, all female slaves are free with their tongues, and when their mistress speaks, it is irksome to the maidens. Indeed, trees are felled, branches are stripped off. I have spared him and his household slaves. And men will say when they hear it, cakes are lacking. For most children there is no food. What is the taste of it today? Indeed, magnets are hungry and perishing. Followers are followed because of complaints. Behold, she who had no box is now the owner of a coffer, and she who had to look at her face in the water is now owner of a mirror. Behold, and it's cut off, and man is happy eating his food, consuming your goods, spoiling them. Exactly as it said in the Bible. So check this out. Behold, the possessor of wealth now spends the night thirsty, while he who once begged his dregs for himself is now the possessor of overflowing bowls. Behold, the possessors of robes are now in rags, while he who could not weave for himself is now possessor of fine linen. Wait a minute. So let's look at these parallels, y'all. Let's look at some of the things here. We got plague is throughout the land, blood is everywhere. All right, so this is Exodus. All the waters of the river were turned into blood. And the papyrus hairs literally says the river is blood. It's a clear parallel. Men shrinking from tasting, human beings and thirst after water. And let's see. So we have Exodus, this 9:23-24, and the fire ran along the ground. There was hail mingled with hail, fire mingled with hail, very grievous. All right, so we see here that the gates consume the gates, columns, and walls are consumed by fire. All right, so we also see the flax and the barley was smitten, or the barley was in season and flax was ripe. That's Exodus. Here's the Egypt. It says wheat in the entire places without revenues. It belonged by right, wheat and barley, geese, fish. And it says, let me scroll down a little bit. Forsooth, and has perished, which was yesterday seen, the land left over to its weariness, like the cutting flax. All right, so this is the Egypt iPower Papyrus. It says the land is without light. Now this is the Bible, and there was a thick darkness in all the land of Egypt. Whew. So we got the blood, we got the darkness, we got the fire. All right. It says, behold, the fire has mounted up on high. Its burning goes forth against the enemies of the land. All right. Now check this out. You remember we saw that the female slaves in Exodus they were kind of getting themselves all dressed up, and they was getting all, all the gold and the jewels or whatever. Check this out. This is from the Egypt, the Ibar papyrus. Gold, lapis, luzis, silver, malachite, carnelian, and bronze are fastened on the neck of female slaves. Alright, and that was from Egypt. So this is another thing from Egypt. All animals, their hearts weep, cattle moan. Behold, cattle are left astray, and there is none to gather them together. Alright, now here's the Bible. And the hand of the Lord is upon the cattle which is in the field, and there shall be a grievous sickness. Gather thy cattle and all that thou hast. And he that did not fear the word of the Lord left his servant and cattle in the field. So this is clearly not an invasion, but a role switch. And one in the exact same way as Exodus 10 plagues. So carefully looking at the dates, the events, we see that these things match up cohesively, perfectly. So now that we have established a timeline before these plagues, the Hebrews were slaves in Thutmose the third time towards the end. So Exodus 1:14, and they made their lives bitter with hard bondage, in mortar and in breaking and all manner of service in the field. And their service wherein they made them was with rigor. So now, here's what we're talking about here. Check this. These are the Hebrews, because this is a painting inside the Egyptian trunk of the tree, Thutmose, and his herald. So his herald inscribed Hebrew wine workers, notorious bandits. So he said that in the person who was in charge, like, the herald and people in charge, like the paintings and everything, they wrote and they said in there that the Hebrew in his painting were winemakers. Here's the thing. Here's how we narrow it down, Israel. Here's how we narrow it down, people. These were the only people who were making wine, the people who looked like this. A little bit different from the Egyptians too. Like they kind of got like I know the Egyptians maybe have the afros too, but they have the afros kind of like coming out. We can see that they're servants. So by inscription, we found that the Hebrews were the Israelites. Some people may say that certain people are Hebrew or the Hebrew, or this people may be the Hebrew when you look online, but this is actually an inscription in this place by the people who are in charge of the paintings, and they inscribed the Hebrew for these people. So these are the Hebrew people. These people are Shemitic. These are the Israelites, emphatically. These are inscribed inscription. These are inscribed inscription. Hebrew is here in the timeline. So it adds up. All this adds up to them being the actual Hebrews, the Israelites, emphatically. So that concludes the Exodus, and we found out who the Hebrews are. We went over the Exodus. We went over a lot of the details, the tuning. Now, some other artifacts going through time showing the Israelites as a nation. Let's look over these inscriptions. These are actual inscriptions. It's actual scholarship supporting the Israelite people. Y'all can look over this. You can look over it. We're just dealing with scholarship, y'all. We letting it. Check this one out right here. It's an inscription, Sennacherib's Annals, found in the palace, dated to 691 to 701 BC. So you can check that out right there. Check this out. It's a long inscription. It talks about how, as for Hezekiah, so this inscription literally mentions Hezekiah, the Judite. So we see that this is clearly talking about the Hebrews. And if you go in there, he talks about how he made them tribute, he made them surrender, he made them pose as gifts. They were kind of slaves, We have the timeline. This is all in this palace. So this is an inscribed picture of Sennacherib's palace at Lachish. Same timeline. So these are the ancient Israelites being taken captives, because he said that the people who were being captive in that palace inscribed were Israelites, Hezekiah's people. We see these people being taken captives. We see these other people on the side falling there. We see the phenotype of these Israelites. We see the hair, the nose, all that. So, this is also dated 700 BC. This is Isaiah's signature. Something interesting I thought here. If you look here, it's actually written in that Paleo Hebrew that we talk about. Paleo Hebrew. Check that out. So moving forward in history. So Tacitus mistakes the Israelites for Ethiopians from a record called Tacitus on the Jews, dated 110 AD. So I'm gonna read you his actual words. Many assure us that the Jews are descendants from those Ethiopians who were driven by fear and hatred to emigrate from their home country when Cephas was king. Okay. But even though he's wrong, for him to mistake them for the Ethiopians mean they must have bore a strong resemblance to the Ethiopians. So, because we see how they looked originally, but as time progresses, we're gonna kind of go through it, and we're gonna get a little bit of the heritage, the timelines. We're gonna get all that, the culture as well. So this is Paul mistaken for an Egyptian. This is Acts 21:38. Art not thou that Egyptian, which before these days made us an uproar, and led us out into the wilderness 4,000 men that were murderers? So this is Romans 8:28. When therefore I have performed this, and have sealed to them this fruit, I will come by you into Spain. So let's go when the Judites lived in Spain. So notice, I want you to notice that so-called black, I'm going to just say black, were brought to America by people who spoke Portuguese and English. So English word for black is black. So the people who took us in slavery, they didn't call us black. The Portuguese word for black is preto. All right. And then if you even look at the, I'm going to mention this, the Latin word for black is not this word we're about to read here. So why were the blacks called by a Spanish word for black? Negro. Why the Spanish word? We were taken in slavery by these two nations. This is a tapestry inscription, Village of Negroes. So this is look up the tapestry inscription, Village of Negroes. It's a village in Cordoba, Spain. There's the source. So this is Alfonso I of Portugal awarded a man, Yaya the Negro, first record of a man being called Negro. And there really is. The first record of a man being called Negro. It's a land and an inscription called a place, Adies dos Negros. A land called Land of Blacks, or Village of Blacks, Village of Negroes. This is dated 150 to 122 AD. So this is Hebrew Xerox of ancient family records traces his family to Joseph, son of Mary, all the way to King David, dated from the beginning 587 BC unto 1258 AD. During the Mongol invasion back at Dad, then people kept scroll records until slavery. So what we're seeing here is that kind of got switched up. It got switched up during the that invasion. But we see that these inscriptions and this man has records that go all the way to the Israelites. So these inscriptions are also very historical. So Jewish Caucasians say they come from these records. So I call them Caucasians because a lot of times they refer to themselves as Caucasians or whatever they would want to refer. So the record states that they are Negro. So he doesn't just say Yaya Negro, as the last name says Yaya the Negro. His last name wasn't Negro, he was just called a Negro. Yaya the Negro and his offspring who called themselves Negroes are listed on Hebrew Xerox of ancient family, records traces his family to Joseph, son of Mary, all the way to King David. So it would be dated to King David. It doesn't reach all the way there, but David's descendants. Dated from the beginning of 587 BC to 1258 AD. Again, yeah, I just don't think that just the thought of I had to say it. Just the thought of man, Jewish Negroes. Probably not. Probably not. Yeah, probably not. That sounds pretty laughable. Okay, so let's see. Some more records here. Let's see. So we see here that that record, it says that they are generally black and may be distinguished from the Spaniards, native Greeks, or Jews. Hair deeper in tincture and more perfect than a raven. Black. So, one thing we are going to distinguish. This is what we are going to distinguish. We're going to distinguish the difference between when it's calling them black, as in their hair, or when it's calling them black, as in them being a black person. Alright? So, when we read this here, it says they are generally black, so as they may be distinguished from Spaniards or native Greeks. For the Jews' hair hath a deeper tincture and a more perfect raven, black. So that they are distinguished from the Spaniards. So when we look at the Greeks and, we look at a lot of these different people, they have black hair too, y'all. So, when it talks about black, it's just talking about them being black. And then it goes on to their hair. So this is the Song of Roland, manuscript about the war's exploration of Spain, dated between 1129 and 1065, and this is called Encounters with the Moors. So this is called Encounters with the Moors. So we see here that this is an actual manuscript, and we got the date on this. This is old. Alright, and here we have the summary. 7 years of valiant King Charlemagne has made wars against the Saracens in Spain. Only one Muslim stronghold remains, the city of Saragossa, under the ruler of King Marsil and Queen Bamimandi. There we go. So, let's check this out. It says, Charles the King, our Lord Sovereign, full of years, has sojourned in Spain, conquered the land, and won western Maine. Now no fortress against doth remain, no city walls are left for him to gain, save Sargas, that sits on high mountains. Mars, its king, who feareth not God's name. Mahomet, man, he invokes Apollon's aid, nor wards off ill that shall to him attain. Alright. So, let's get how he describes these people here, the Moors. So the misbegotten men who are more black than ink is on the pen with no part white, only except their teeth. I know very well that here to die we're bound, as I can tell. So we see all that. We see their tone there. So we see the head rides in Saracen. No worse criminal rides in that company, stained with the marks of his crimes and his treason. So we, a lot of these people are also synonymous with the Jews as well. You can look into that. It says, lacking in faith, faith in God, Saint Mary's son, as he is black as melted pitch. So when we see, when people try to say, oh, were these Saracens, were these people, were they really black, or were they, like more brown, and maybe they really didn't see black people? When you get a chance, take a look at melted pitch and see what conclusion you get with that. Okay. So this is a quote from Alhambra Decree, dated the 31st of March, 1492, the Spanish Inquisition. So it says, this is a quote from there that I pulled up. It says, it couldn't quash Moorish Jew genes. You can look up these records yourself. So, obviously the Jews and the Moors looked alike, because he's saying he couldn't quash Moorish Jew genes. King of Moor, Moorish king. So this is an actual picture, and it gives the date and it gives the writer. And if you look in here, you can see l'amour, which is French for Moor. The Jew-Moorish conquest with the victory of Tariq Ibn Zayed in 711, the lives of the Sephardim changed dramatically for the most part. The invasion of the Moors was welcomed by the Jews of Iberia. Most Muslim sources, like old Kufic scripts onto a limestone Umayyad coin text, tell us that the Jews provided valuable aid to the invaders. Once captured, the defenses of Cordoba was left in the hands of the Jews. So the words of Spinoza, the Judite, born 1632. Check this out. We're going into the records, y'all. We're going into the records and we're getting the history. We're getting the history, we're getting the documents, we're getting the records, the hidden archives, the hidden codes. It's Deuteronomy 28:19. Cursed shalt thou be. Cursed shalt thou be when thou comest in, and cursed shalt thou be when thou goest out. So we know about Deuteronomy 28. People know about that, especially now. People know about Deuteronomy 28. So this is his words. So keep in mind, this is in the 1600s. It says, cursed be he by day, and cursed be he by night. Cursed be he when he lies down. Cursed be he when he rises up. Cursed be he when he goeth out, and cursed be he when he cometh in. The Lord will not pardon him. Anger and wrath of the Lord will rise against this man, and bring him all the curses that are written in the book of the law, and the Lord will destroy his name from under the heavens. So they were aware of this. They were very aware of this. Now we're going to look here from these biographies of Spinoza. One written by the Lutheran clergyman Johann Kohler, Latinized Colerus, first published in 1705, is a primary source. So by the other Jean Maximilian, this is written like close to right at the time when he was alive. So a free-thinking French refugee living in Holland is thought to have been written soon after Spinoza's death. There you go. 1677. Though not published until 1719, Colerus described Spinoza's physical appearance. He was of a middle size. He had good features in his face, and skin, not hair, and skin, not personality, and the skin somewhat black. Black curled hair, long eyebrows, and of the same color, so that one might easily known by his looks that he was descended from Portuguese Jews. So he was next to black. You know, you're brown, you pretty almost black. Interesting. So now we're looking at this right here. This is another inscription right here. This is Procopius of Caesarea, Byzantine. This quote that I'm reading you guys is old. It's dated 560 AD. A scholar who wrote in Greek said this in his history of the wars. Beyond that, there are men not black-skinned like the Moors. I know the Moors and the Jews were not the same. That's why Yahya Negro, he adopted the name Negro to set himself apart from the Moors. That's why they call themselves Negroes instead of Moors. But as we read before, the Moorish Jew genes. So they looked similar. And we see that the Moors were black skinned. And we see that Jew was also black skinned. So this is a drawing here from the Byzantine Empire. Another one from the Byzantine Empire. The other one was depicting King David and their writing. This one is depicting the Jews and some other people, people holding them captive. So those were the actual writings, the paintings during the Byzantine Empire, and those were the actual dates. So now we're going to deal with some other heritage-like inscriptions from what is called the Golden Age in Spain, the Jews' Golden Age in Spain. So this is the Hek hull, had a decorative band that praised the temple in Jerusalem and linked the synagogue to it. I will bow down toward your holy Hek hull and praise your name for your mercy and your truth, for you have magnified your word above all your name. And they wrote this, y'all, in Hebrew. This is a beautiful thing. Remember, this is Cordoba, okay? Land of the Negroes. This is Psalms 138 and 2. So let's get into the way that they treasured this so much that they wrote it. Be merciful to me, O God, be merciful to me, for my soul trusts in you. In the shadow of your wings I will take refuge until these great troubles pass by. We got Psalms 57 and 2. Sanctuary in miniature, the home of testimony, which a ship Mohem finished. Son, minister, and then gives a name. And then they say, also come back, O God, and hurry to rebuild Jerusalem. So this is very interesting. It says to rebuild Jerusalem. That's very interesting. So this is the woman section. It says, your neck is like the Tower of David, built with Teresh. This is Song of Solomon 4:4. We know that. This is also inscribed. Another inscription. These inscriptions are in Cordoba, Spain. They're dated. We got the date right there. 1315, the Byzantine Empire. So inscriptions. May God remove. This is an inscription, y'all. So they knew about the curse of Deuteronomy 28. So they said, may God remove the curses from our nation and rebuild Jerusalem soon. I want y'all to look up these inscriptions that are in that synagogue in Cordoba, Spain. And it is in Cordoba, Spain. Cordova, tomato, So, this is also another one. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Those who love you shall be blessed. Peace be with your walls, prosperity within your palaces. Reason why I got this guy here is because he's during the Byzantine Empire. One of the Saxony. A lot of the Saxony people were Jews. Here's the interesting thing about this guy. The reason why the picture looks like this is because there's an actual X-ray that was actually done of the painted over pictures of John of Saxony. And they paint him as lighter. When they look at the X-ray, this is what they found. Now, we want to be efficient. We want to give out the information, but we want to be scholarly competent when we give information. So in the end, I'm also going to show a reference in a museum library showing that whitewashing isn't just something that maybe did it really happen, did it not happen, that's hearsay. I'm going to give you a document. It's actually in a museum or library, wherever you want to call it. And you can look this up yourself. I'm going to give you the reference that whitewashing did actually take place. And this is the x-ray showing that picture of John of Saxony. And I'm going to give that reference at the end of all this. So let's go back to the Byzantine Empire. So the Byzantine Empire, this is the end. So let's talk about how it ended. This is from Petrarch's work, Africa. So we're going to see that there was a lot of masterminding going into the Byzantine Empire, the ending of America as we know it, the Americas, changes in Africa. We're gonna go over how all this was coerced and how it all led to one date. So let's get into that. So Petrarch's work called Africa, originally published 1397 AD, letters to Ferdinand II of Aragon. So look closely and you will see he was complaining about the Africans, the Negroes and Moors living there. Now, commentary, if you look this up, they'll say that he was admiring Hannibal. He was admiring Africa. Now we're going to look at the record and we're going to look at what he says, because that is why I'm saying he's complaining based on the record. So now, it says here, to you also there have been conveyed the request in this regard of the most illustrious king of Sicily, by whose high and profound judgment I, though unworthy, have been approved, to whom, moreover, by ancient customs, the power of approval has been entrusted by the Roman people. Okay, so you got approval to send this, all the way to the king. Okay. Now let's look at what he says. Let's look at that record. This is what he sent to the king, y'all. You guys can kind of read over this. I'm gonna hit the bullet points. And it says, after the death, I see Rome's destiny receding, its noble traditions disgracefully decaying. Woe is me. Why must I die? Our home's descendants will die with you. But you have received your due, will reach heaven's high dome. What of the rabble to come? They will be the world's laughingstock, a disgrace to the noble race. They will look at which they deserve, Taurus and Stygian, and yet I am too hasty. I see father and son equally noble, in double triumph on a joyful Capitoline. She is variant and paired of Lars. So let's get to, So let me scroll down here. So it says, I see not in two chariots, instead piety carefree passes in one alone. It is an extraordinary sight. It's an extraordinary sight, indeed, and a propitious omen. So propitious, look that word up. It's not negative, y'all. It's positive. And it's extraordinary, propitious. Now let's see what's so propitious, what's so great. And I highlighted here, Jerusalem and its glorious faith conquered by the sword. Why do you enjoy that, sir? Will fall at the hands of these leaders. It will be heaven's will that these two destroy sacred rights with their swords. Wow. The people will be able to earn their wages of their sins. So he liked that he knew that they were paying for their sins, and he liked that. So it pains me to go further. For foreigners of Hispanic and African stock will take the scepters and the glory of empire won by us with such labor. Who can bear these dregs of humanity, these disgraced living in our sword, and attaining to the height of our affairs? Now he's talking about, okay, obviously he's talking about Rome, because, the Moors, they took over the Roman Empire. So basically it's like, we're happy that Jerusalem got taken over. Now, we got these people taking over Jerusalem, and the inclination is basically that he's basically insinuating is that I'm glad that the Hispanics and the Africans, they got taken out of their land. So now they're trying to take over our land, because there has to be a reason he's drawing that parallel. You can leave that to where we would leave it, but there's clearly a parallel because he's saying that for a reason. Yeah. So we see that the whole Jerusalem, when we look at the actual records, not everybody was, Jerusalem this, Jerusalem that. Some people were plotting. So this is young Achilles. Still another fills Amathia when with Rome's bone. Even I will now recall the deeds of our own time. Rather, my inspiration is to destroy utterly with the aid of Asunium Mars, the cursed African, and to blunt their excessive might. But the king always so when we hear about him saying that he's giving the Africa props, if we look at the records, he called them the cursed Africans. Wait a minute. So weapons remained there of no hope. That which fates allowed occurred, a narrow span of time. We arrayed our hardest core with swords and sent the Africans dead to hell. Wrath and grief gave us. Tacticus had no place, and there was no semblance of a pain, just as when a greedy shepherd his trusty veil waging war on. Now I got these shots to give you a feel for what's going on, and it is based on context. Now, if you want to go look at the record yourself, you can see for yourself that what I'm bringing out is based on the context, and this is the actual record. Okay, but we want to get to the point. And if you read around where it says "curse to hell," he meant what he said. He was talking against the Africans rather than with them. Alright, so again, Jerusalem, glorious faith, it's a propitious omen to him. So now it's another record by Petrarch. That's what I call him. This is again 1343 that year. So in the conclusion of his epic Africa, he wrote, "My fate is to live among varied and confusing storms. But for you, perhaps, if as I hope and wish you will live long after me, there will follow a better age. This sleep of forgetfulness will not." Now we'll get into the reason why it's named Dark Ages. Not because there wasn't any economic progression, not because there weren't inventors, thinkers. Okay? It's because of this. The sleep of forgetfulness will not last forever. When the darkness has been dispersed, our descendants can come again in the former pure radiance. So he's pretty much just upset because, here we have all these black people doing really well, the Moors, and we have these Jews, come on now, what's going on? So keep in mind that there were still Caucasian people who were they were there. They were there. For him to be writing this, getting it sent to the king, there's no document of any oppression that was going towards him, but just seeing other people doing so well, he wanted it to just be him, to their people, So that's how they felt, They wanted to be the takeovers. They wanted to be the head honchos, So that's what that is. So Petrarch, he intended this grand event to be a new age, So he said this. This is his quote here. A new age, the Renaissance, a time of rebirth of the Roman classical tradition of 1200 years before. So now, there's a certain period where everything's going to change. The way we look at the European country, the way we look at America, everything's going to change. And it's going to go into what we have today. The kind of thinking, the kind of things we see today. This was all the start of a change. And there were a lot of people were aware of it. We're going to go into this. So this is Columbus. He knew about it too. Columbus, on his own journal of discovery, this is what he quoted. He said, "From our viewpoint in the world, we have inherited a world shrunken by technological advance and robbed of its mystery by scientific inquiry. We see 1492 as the date of a great beginning, an expansion of man's acquaintance with his planetary environment on a scale so great that it was not exceeded until he escaped the gravitational pull of the earth." And there were a lot of conjunctions, if you look into it, in 1492. So they were all looking in the stars, preparing this great event, this great takeover that they used. But they did do it by cruelty, though. So this is Mundus Novus writing, and claimed the America Vespucci. "I've discovered a continent in whose southern region that is inhabited by more numerous people and animals than our Europe or Asia or Africa." Now remember, at that time, the world was 3 continents. So, okay, and the first known explicit identification of part of the Americas as a continent like the other 3. So, and you can look up in looking into that and another document as well, stating that this place that they discovered was the 4th part of the world. Now, let's get into the Bible. Let's see how the parallels. This is Revelation 6 and 8. "And I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and his name that sat on him was Death, and hell followed him, and power was given unto them over the 4th part of the earth, to kill with sword, and with hunger, and with death, and with the beast of the earth." So America, as the discoverers, when they came to America, to call this place the 4th part of the earth. What happened when they came here? Killing, death. What does the Bible call it? The 4th part of the earth as well. And what does it say would happen? Killing, death. Very, 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 very clean parallel. So the second part of Alhambra decree detailed the conditions for expulsion. And this is in the year 1492. The expulsion of the Jews was final. "We agreed to send all Jews and Jews out of our kingdom and never return to them or any of them." So, never to return again. So there's not going to be a big influx of Jews there after that, you know. So this is another part of Patriarchs Africa, the letter 1397 AD. So this says, "How great is their love for this general? How great is the honor that calls them arms? For when they see how much resolve is in his mind, how much faith he has in the gods, and how Jupiter is by his side, they stand firm and rally to him, thinking he was." So I want you to keep that in mind, that he wrote this letter to the king, and the king approved of this letter. Now we see that supposedly the Jews were kicked out of, I want you to look at this. Supposedly they were kicked out by commentary, not by record. We just read record. They were kicked out. Why? Because they did not convert to Christianity. But we hear this man reference to the gods, different gods that should be honored. Why was he not reprimanded? Because it wasn't the real reason why the Jews were kicked out. It was an excuse. Real reason was because of the beginning or the ending part of the Renaissance. To have all the Moors and the Jews, all of them done away with the European countries. Because they weren't just doing Christianity. Clearly, as we just read. There was no reference to Jesus there, y'all. The underlying Christian attitude towards the murdered Jews, however, did not differ much. So we see here, want to look in here, and it's, going how they live in closer contact with the Christians. And the crowd hoped that the outcome would be a mass, kind of reading down here, conversion to Christianity. And I want you to go ahead and read this yourself as well. Everybody who's looking at this, read it yourself. All right. And I want you to see this part right here. This is what we going to read all, check out all that, but check out this right here. Get right to the point. Moreover, converts were not more exempt from fiscal abuse after their conversion than they were before it. Indeed, converts became an easy target during times of conflict. On October 11th, 1276 AD. And I gave you the source right there as well. These are the reports. These are the reports. These are the reports from that time. The actual reports, not the Wikipedia reports. These are the sources. So let's go into how everything happened. So it says the Native Americans who also practice Hebrew customs. So we have evidence such as the Baton Creek stone, people's, different things. We can go into that. There's a lot. Baton Creek, Los Lunas, there's a lot. So they have their things as well. And as we went into just those Hebrew inscriptions before, there's also Hebrew inscriptions in the Americas as well. So, and let's see. So the people of the Americas. So we have Baton Creek stones. We have the people of the Americas. We have the Zhou dynasty of West Africa, and we have the Byzantine Empire. Were all connected, and we're going to show how these empires were connected. The Americas, the Zhou dynasty of Africa, and also the Byzantine Empire of Spain. So Christopher Columbus in the journal Africa and the Discovery of America, he explains that Columbus noted in his journal that the Native Americans confirmed and told Christopher Columbus black-skinned people had come from the southeast in boats, trading in gold-tipped spears. So they already knew about these dudes, these guys coming in. We already just went into the description of the Jews, that they were black-skinned, trading. You already know what's going on. That's why if you notice, when you in the Americas, they called America New Spain. Why New Spain? Why is it connected with Spain? All connected, y'all. we're gonna really get in. We're gonna get into the dates and show that. So this is from the Tariqa al-Fatish. This is writings by Mahmud Kat in the 1600s, and he speaks of an Israelite dynasty called Zuwa dynasty, or the Za dynasty. So these are these records right here. And it's we see the translation here, and it states that there's a Jewish community was formed by a group of Egyptian Jews who had traveled to West Africa through Chad. Alright, so these are actual documents, and this is kind of going into a little bit where they came from. Alright, so the Jews of West Africa, and they formed this group. There were a distinct group of black people. There's also we have John Ogilvy, the different people who may report seeing these different people at different times, so these people were there. And let's go into the Za dynasty, right? So we see here, we have the names, everything kind of the same. We see here they convert to Islam. This kind of going over their records. Okay, but we still see, convert to Islam. And we still see the same people, still people there. We still got Jews, kind of rule and everything. They converted to Islam, but they became occupying the Mali Empire. Masa Musa had a real big impact on a lot of things when he came with the Mali Empire. That's when that whole thing jumped off. And let's go here. Let's check it out. The empire ended. The whole kind of like the Jews really kind of being with it. You got Moors too, but it was a Jew empire. The Za dynasty was started by Jews. Now you have someone here, Askia, who an eyewitness named Leo Africanus, which we're going to go into, refers to this man as being Libyan, another Hamitic nation. But it just so happens that he took over this Jew African dynasty in 1492. Africa was never the same. So this is what was going on in Africa. During what's going on in America, why what's going on with America, Christopher Columbus, this was going on in Africa. A big change going on also in Africa as well. Because many Jews converted to Islam, it all ended. So we see it all ended, and they kind of knew that. They knew what they were doing they felt that. And we see this quote here dated 1135 to 1204. And we see the man there, Maimonides. He's a Jew. He said, "Dear brothers, because of our many sins, Hashem has cast us among this nation, the Arabs, who are treating us badly. They passed laws designed to cause us distress and make us displeased. Never has there been a nation that hated, humiliated, and loathed us as much as this one." Now we see in the beginning, they were kind of with it. They were kind of with the Jews doing their thing. But then it went sour, as we see. And we convert, and because a lot of the people converted to Islam. All three empires fell in the same year, 1492, around the time of the Za dynasty, when they became Muslim, as well as the Byzantine Empire of Spain. The Byzantine Empire, the Jews, the Negroes, kicked out of Spain, 1492. All right, and the Jews in Spain, a lot of them started to convert as well. The Native Americans who went into many pagan religions, we know what happened to them in 1492 as well with Christopher Columbus. So many crusades and massacres took place, such as the Black Death, the 1400s AD. So, yeah, really went down. So this is historian Leo Africanus. He wrote in 1526. So he lived during the Jews' exit of Spain in 1492. And he says in Gura there were some very rich Jews. The intervention of preacher Muhammad al-Megili of Tlemcen set up the pillage of their goods, and most of them have been killed by the population. This event took place during the same year when the Jews had been expelled from Spain and Sicily by the Catholic king. So Leo Africanus he's writing about what happened to the Jews when they got kicked out of Spain. And Gura, we're talking about these Jews being in Africa. So this is what he further wrote. The king Askia, Askia, if you look up him, he's a West African king, y'all. He's a declared enemy of the Jews. He will not allow any to live in the city. If he hears it said that a Berber merchant frequents them or does business with them, he confiscates his goods. So, as we see when we see a lot of things about this, these are the beginning parts before the transatlantic slave trade, which actually took place in the early 1500s. So we're getting the end of the 1400s when a lot of this stuff is going down, right? 1400s. So we see that the Jews, it wasn't so sporadic or random Africans they were segregated. They were not allowed to live in the city. Segregation happened in Africa. Certain black people weren't rolling with certain black people. And the black people that were isolated, they got the bitter end of the stick. If you do a lot of other looks in history, it was the isolated ones they got enslaved. The Jews were the isolated. It says he also calls this place land of the blacks. So they were black people, obviously. These Jews were black, but they were still segregated. So and this is a quote from this record. This is an eyewitness account. This is primary. It says, so the king Askia and his empire took over the Zhou dynasty 1492. This is what I'm saying about this. The Portuguese and the Englishmen also helped Askia and brought slaves here in the records of Portuguese. Because if you look up Leo Africanus records, he allowed the Portuguese to kind of mingle in with him and tell about what they saw and everything. So they were kind of working with each other. That's why the 1492 that Christopher Columbus and all his people were talking about, they got some Africans to kind of get with them on that. That's why the 1492, they got him with the 1492 and said, this is significant. This is our year of victory. And Askia got in on it. All right. And you can reference that from his records. So this is in a European Jewish newspaper known as the Hearts, published documents from a Portuguese traveler who wrote about what he saw in Senegal during the time of the slave trade. The Portuguese traveler, dated from 1400s, early 1500s, said this. This is the source. Some of the people here believe in Muhammad, but the majority are idol worshippers, wrote the nameless Portuguese navigator. In this land there are Jews known as Gauls. Alright? So there were some black people in Scotland, because if you look up Gauls, that goes back to those people. Now there were some black people, there was different peoples who were in that place, and that's a whole nother thing. But that's what those goes into, the Gauls. Okay? There were certain Jews known as Gauls. They are black. They are black, just like the rest of the inhabitants. But they have no synagogues and do not conduct Jewish ceremonies. So we're not talking about converters, because they didn't even do Jewish ceremonies. They were ethnic and they were These are Portuguese travelers who are writing about this. They do not live with other blacks, but separately, he reported, because they do not dare enter into the village. They locate themselves behind the houses of the ruler of the village, and at dawn they sing his praises until he grants them partition of millet, and then they go. If they don't do so, the rest of the blacks would not tolerate them. So great is their hatred for them, which forbids them from entering any house except for that of the ruler of the village. If they find them inside the village, they are beaten with sticks. Heavy segregation, y'all. Heavy segregation. Alright? So, now we kind of went into those same Jews in West Africa with the same Jews in Spain, which explains the reason why the Jews that were brought to Africa were called Negro. And then there's also a group of Jews that were also brought from Scotland as well, and they were also black. So we're going to get to another record here. This is Christopher Columbus here. These are documents relating to his voyage. I'm giving you guys gold right now. I'm giving you the sources. So that we're transparent. And within this source, it states, banished Jews from Aiolos to Africa at the very time Columbus was fitting out his expedition. This is quoted from Columbus' first expedition to Americas in 1492. This is navigator and explorer Pedro Alonso Nino, son of a white Spaniard and enslaved African woman. So he was also called Jewish. So if you do other research within this man, you gotta dig in it. You'll see he was called Jewish as well because of his mother. It would have to be because of his mother, because his mother was black, she was African. So that is why to this day, Jewish people go by their mother's side. But Numbers 1:18. So this is from the Jewish Encyclopedia. Jews settled in Jamaica during the century preceding Cromwell's conquest. Alright, this is proprietary rights of the family of Columbus to Jamaica were recognized in 1508, 1538, and passed to the female Braganza line in 1576. So we know that the village of the Negroes was in Cordoba, Spain, but it got established in Lisbon, Kentucky, when Yaya Negro was awarded the land or village of the Negroes in Portugal, Lisbon, Portugal, and Braganza was in Lisbon, Portugal. So we see that the Jewish people are congratulating Christopher Columbus. What's that? Christopher Columbus, he's the bad guy, right? You know, why are they why is he recognized and passed to the female line? Why is that passed to the female line? And why is this starting here? And why is it passed to the female line if the Bible talks about the male line? And why is it that the man who was called a Jew, he had an African mother and a white father? So we gotta kind of look at these things here. All right. So let's see. So it says passed through the male line to the female line in 1576. So the men with fathers who were Jews with were slaves. So if you had a black father who was an actual Jew, you were a slave. That's why they didn't do it to the males. So that's why a lot of times when we talk about the Jewish people, some people say they are Jews, people say they're not. They are particularly who they say they are. That's why you have to be historically careful, because they are technically who they say they are. They claim they are Jews from the mother's line. And in fact, through their mother's line, it does go to a Jew. But I would say that in order to make yourself a Jew, it has to be through your father's line, because that's consistent with Numbers 118. So this is a document, and I'm giving you the sources, y'all. Just look up these sources. It's Eastern Illinois University. All right. It's called The Favorite of Heaven: The Impact of Skin Color on the Atlantic and Ethnic Africans in the 18th Century, y'all. So this is in this document right here. Africans attaining their freedom in South Carolina. It was common for deathbed requests to include submissions of female slaves and their mixed-race children. In this colony, the relationship between freedom and skin color was so strong that over a third of all recorded consumptions were mulatto children, and 3/4 of all adults. So we see that there's a lot of relationships between the female slaves and the slave owners. And we also have to think about why they kept track of, a lot of times, the women that they raped. So the mulatto children ownership of other ethnic Africans. This is a quote within this record. This is this record saying, this is not me, this is a record saying this. Mulatto ownership of other ethnic Africans made a clear distinction between free and slaves, coloreds. This distinction remained right up to the abolition of slavery, as mulattoes continued to claim ownership of darker skinned Africans. So there was a hierarchy, because a lot of times when you look at the ancients, whether you're talking about white, black, whatever, they understood that it goes through the father. That's why when you look up Booker T. Washington, they said he was raised in a slave home, but mysteriously he left that home and went to a rich place, right? And we see that he was taught before slavery ended, but the rest of his other family, they was kind of struggling. He had a white father. And we also see here that, he kind of supported blacks still being on the bottom of the totem pole, and he appealed much to the white people and just said, if you do good, you be a good man, good black man, you work hard, and you get a good education and stay off the streets and stuff like that. But he wasn't dealing with the same things. This is factual. Look at his biography of his life. He talked about what he saw, but he didn't say so much of what he did when it came to slavery. That's a key thing when you look at a lot of the records of his life, because they're available. And when you also look at what we just see right here, mulattoes owning slaves, and the distinction was you had to have a white father. That's when you look at the Dos Rose, when the Cherokees were one of the darkest of the Native Americans. There were various skin tones of the Native Americans. There's various Native Americans, but there was a dark tribe. They were described as dark. All of them melanated, but they were described as dark. But if you notice, in the Trail of Tears, they were the most one killed off. And when you hear about how different natives had natives as slaves, different ones also, because it wasn't just blacks, they also had other natives as slaves. They also had blacks as slaves. When you look at the Dos Rose, that's what more commonly known as, the $5 Indian, because they paid, $5 because they didn't have actually enough Indian within them. And their fathers never went to a native man. They may have had some, but their father's lineage wouldn't go all the way to that man. The same thing with the black man. Christopher Columbus went with black people with white fathers, so-called black people with white fathers, and they helped them and they enslaved as well. So it more developed, okay? It developed into something that was, color-coded, but it began by the way the ancients used to do it. Because when we're at 1700s, 1400s, they're familiar with that. And that's why when we go in these laws, it's so much heaping on white man, black woman, children, benefits. Boom. So let's look at this another part of this record. Similarly, in the 1785, the Virginia General Assembly enacted legislation defining Negro as mulatto, all persons whose grandfathers and grandmothers, anyone who is or shall have been a Negro, although all his other progenitors, except that descending from a Negro, shall have been white persons, shall be deemed a mulatto. This is kind of a different approach. If your mother ain't your father, but the source has to be a white person. One black person in there, but their parents got to be white. And so every person who shall have 1/4 or more Negro blood shall. So then they developed the Negro 1/4. And that was the mulatto. Because they were different. We're going over the rules and the laws of the mulatto race. Of different, obviously blacks and the natives who had slaves. Because you had natives enslaving real natives. That's what I would call it. So along the Gold Coast and blacks enslaving blacks, real blacks, Jews, and native Israelites. Along the Gold Coast of Africa, white men with this is actually from the document, y'all. This is not me talking. This is a document. The Gold Coast African men with mixed race children often requested advanced positions for their children. These special requests ensured the futures of their children. Robert Collins, a former company of merchants trading to African employee, educated his mulatto son in England and subsequently attempted to use this influence to appoint him as commander of an African fort. Wow, in slavery times? Really? Wow. That's a lot. Whoa. During slavery, this is when black people were getting cut up and people getting all types of horrible things. That's documented, but these particular people with the white fathers, they had it a little better, to say the least. So this record shows mulattoes own slaves. Now, if someone is that, you're mulatto, it is what it is. That person still has melanin. But this is record, y'all. This is record. It is what it is. So these opportunities resulted more often than not from coerced relationships between ethnic African women and white males in their communities, in spaces where few white women could be enticed to migrate. Relations between black and white were surreptitiously encouraged. So it also, that was from that record. So now I'm stating here that it also stated that the African woman refused to be with the mulatto men, but sometimes they use force. So a lot of those people, and also if you look at the Taino history, they refused to be with those mulatto children too. So after the rape, they started just mingling with other white people. And over time, they just began to just look like regular white people. That's why when you look at the old pictures of the Jewish people, some of them have their hair is a little bit, different, But now they just look like pure white people. When you look at them older, they kind of look a little bit more almost mixed. And when you look at some of the records of 1948 with Hitler, there's some children there who kind of look black in there, like kind of in the mix. You can look that up. They're actually there. All right. Let's see. So the Jewish people were mulatto with Negro mothers. So that's why they to this day go by their mothers, and that's where the split happened around the time of Christopher Columbus, as you see with these records. So I'm giving you records here with the record we have, the Jewish Encyclopedia, how things were done, the mulatto rules, in history, that Christopher Columbus is where the split happened. And they started going with the term Jewish, and the Negro just stayed the Negro. As we can see, the Negro was known as being a Jew, but they just kept the name Negro, kept the name sometimes African, and that's where the split happened. So these are some names which I actually looked up here in Slave Voyages of the actual Hebrews, y'all. These are the actual Hebrews, or the so-called Africans that were brought on the slave ships. And if we look here, they all have Hebrew names. All of these are Hebrew names, ancient Hebrew names. And we see there they were brought up from different places as well. But there's a different people listed there. There's the Kru Africans, also known as Kru Africans, based on the word Kru. They didn't give a lot of information about themselves. So the homeland. So this is the record I'm giving about them, and this is the homeland, diasporas, and labor workers. The case of Kru workers, 1792 to the 1900s. This is a long record, y'all. So this is a snippet of the record here. So the Caribbean, although their numbers were not sufficient to meet their laborers' needs, the British colonies, the nature of the Kru contracts and their laboring activities on estates, wharves, and canals in Jamaica, Trinidad, British Ghana are examined. So this is Richard Harvest and Bruce. So they, as we see here, they engage in seaborne, shoreside activity in French West ports in West Africa. They were sea people. So this is, you may be familiar with this. The main group of Kru Africans are Grebo, according to Joseph Williams of the early 1900s, who explored, speaks of the Grebo having Hebrew customs. So the main Kru African people are called actually Grebo. Kru just means, you work on the crew, because they didn't give information. But the Grebo people, who they actually were, they practiced Hebrew customs. Alright. Just a quote here. In the 1840s, in their canoes, they disposed these girdles in the crowns of their hats. Nor is it unusual when a shower threatens them on shore to see them place the sole garment in the same convenient receptacle, and then make for shelter when rowing a boat or paddling a canoe. It is their custom to sing, and as the music goes, they seem to become invigorated, applying their strength cheerfully and with limbs as unwearied as their voices. And black people, the Jews, very musical people. Very, very musical people. Alright. So they did not give much information about themselves to the colonizers. What is known is that they were people of the sea with Hebrew customs. So now we're going to go into some records about the Jew pirates of the Caribbean. So this is from the Comunero uprising in Castile. Okay. So this is a case study for early modern revolution. All right. Group of Cortez cities that rebelled against Charles V. Converso, name given to Muslims and Jews who converted to Christianity. Alright, so this is an English state paper of 1521, bear the evidence of Sinan and Reyes who sailed with Hayreddin Barbosa. So check this out. This is a pretty known one right here. Pretty known. So it says, as to Corone, it was reported at Rome a few days ago that Andrea Doria was informed that the famous Jewish pirates had prepared a strong fleet to meet the Spanish galleys, which are joined Doria's 19. So this happened on 1521, and that they met a fleet. And we see here that there was a great uprising, which we just read before, that the Jews rebelled, against these people, and they was ready to battle, right? Now, the circumstances matching the Maroon Rebellion, and the Maroons consisting of Negroes, Tainos, Jamaicans, and Aztecs. That's literally who the Maroons are. Started as being Negroes, Tainos, then developed into a lot of various other people, Jamaicans. And Aztecs. So let's check this out here. Let's look at the date. This is interesting here. This is Perez Porto de Archivos and we Espanoles. The Spanish manuscript is dated 1523 December 27th. Pamplona, Spain. Theme: news had arrived in Spain about the additional uprising by black slaves in La Espanola less than 2 years after the 1521 rebellion. I thought that the Jews did the 1521 rebellion. What do blacks have to do with that? These are the actual records, y'all. The actual records. Hidden records. Plain sight. You can look up the archives in Spain and find this in their library. It's still available. Check that out. Written in Spanish. So, of course, I'm gonna give y'all the translation. So, as to you say that besides the blacks that in the earlier days had to run away from the services of their masters, now again they have begun to unsettle another squad of them. I appreciate as a service what you say you have done about it, and since you realize how dangerous a thing it could be if it were not punished. So we see that there's a rebellion, okay? And so we see here that in 1520 we see the Maroons all again around the 1521, 1520s, and it says since the 1520s, runaway African slaves had formed Maroon communities in remote regions bordering Spanish conquest. So we see that rebellion that took place in Spain, the Maroons rebelled against Spain. The Jews, according to a separate record, rebelled against Spain as well. Circumstantial evidence points to the exact same events, that they're exact same people. So this is in the Jamaican archives, and the first time Jews were recognized as a part of the Jamaican cultural life was in 1655, when Britain took control of the island and welcomed Jewish immigrants to travel and leisure. Many worked as gold traders, sugar merchants, but some became thieving pirates. Okay. Alright, so the Jews were recognized as part of the cultural life when they took control. And let's see what happened. So this is a main article of the invasion of Jamaica. When the British Empire captured Jamaica in 1655, many of them fought with the Spanish, who gave them their freedom, and then fled to the mountains, resisting the British for many years to maintain their freedom, becoming known as Maroons. Alright, same account. Here's another thing right here. Check this out. I want you to look up these records as well. This is the Jews' tribute in Jamaica. It's extracted from journals in the House of Assembly of Jamaica. Hidden records, y'all. Hidden records. So this is Thursday the 5th, April 1739. A motion being made that the House would, according to the order, proceed to the hearing of the Jews by their council against the clause to the bill for raising several sums of money, applying the same several use of subsisting the officers and soldiers in the 8 independent companies to prevent the exploration of several communities such as French and the Spanish islands, and prevention of several frauds committed by the persons trading to the northern colonies, which particularly affected them. They were called and fully heard by their council at the bar of the house and having withdrawn. So it looks like a money thing. They want to get, there were frauds, taxes, things, and there were things done against these people, and they wanted to get things done right with them. These are Jews. Again, these are Jews. And again, that was 1739, right? That was a treaty. So now, this is a record called After the Treaties. So we see the Jew pirates, they have a treaty. 1739. We just saw the record. Now we have a Maroon Treaty. 1739. That's the source. And it reads, votes of the House of the Assembly of Jamaica drawn from the resources in Britain. And it's also in Britain. They're both in Britain. And Jamaica, using data drawn from the sources, I assessed how the Maroons of Jamaica forged the identity for themselves in the century under slavery following the peace treaties of 1739 and 1740. So we see that that's a clear parallel. They both had those peace treaties. Now, let's talk about this guy right here. Alauda Akwe. No, he talks about pirates as well. And he's a primary source as well because he was alive in these times. He's an eyewitness. So in the writings of Alauda Aquino, a Negro from the 1700s, Kogono also uses a reversal of perspective in order to humanize Africans who are taken as slaves. He reversed the scenario and asked the British leader to consider how they would react if the British were sold into slavery against their will. Suppose that some of the African pirates had been as dexterous as the Europeans, and that they were made executors of the. So he's basically saying, look at the parallel. He's making a parallel, okay, of Great Britain. And we're referring to the exact same time as the Jew pirates, but he's calling them African pirates. See how these things are simultaneously talking about the exact same event, different records, and and the exact same event doing the exact same things. The parallel is amazing. And so that's how we do unbiased collective analysis to come up with this. So it's emphatic. And though even assisted by some of your insidious neighbors, for those may be some even among you more vile enough to do such a thing if they could get money by it, and that they should carry off your sons and your daughters and your wives and friends to a perpetual barbaric slavery, you would certainly think that those African pirates were justly deserving of any punishment that could be brought upon them, but the European pirate merchandisers of the human species. Alright, so he's basically making a parallel. If we got a European pirate merchandisers, and that nation will belong to what nation they will are equally as bad. Alright? He's making a parallel. Alright? So these writings are Olado Aquino are dated to 1760s and 1770s during the time of the Jew pirates, and as you can see, he refers to these pirates as being African or Negro, Olado Aquino being an eyewitness of these things. So this is a real interesting one right here. We're going to get into the ending of the Maroons and why they ended. Because a lot of the support of the Maroons came from different places. And even certain blacks that were in Ireland. Certain agreements that were done with William Penn and a lot of different things. But this is how it ended, y'all. Let's check it out. So it's From Freedom to Bondage. This is the source. The Jamaican Maroons. It's dated 1655 to 1770s. Jonathan Brooks, University of North Carolina, Bloomington. Andrew Clark, Facility, Mentor, UNCW. The utilization documents written by the British Archaeological Excavations and Settlements and the recent ethnos histories was essential in analyzing Maroon hegemony. Alright, now here's the quote. The Maroons established a complex society. So it wasn't just a bunch of people just running around. They were dressed up, you know. It was a society that was to be reckoned with. That was distinct culture and identity. It was through external and internal coercion that the Maroon autonomy was stifled. So they weren't. So this document admitting, a separate document admitting that the Maroons weren't defeated by the Spain or the British. It was by internal and external coercion. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because if you look at the records of the boarding schools of the indigenous people, and we look at the 1770s, at the end, it talks about at the end of the wars. And at the end of the wars, this is when this thing was started. So when the Jews and the Maroons went over and they made those agreements, the British people wanted them to go against their own other Tainos and blacks. So there's Tainos and blacks first, Tainos and blacks, and also Aztecs. So because they were Maroons and some were free, so they stirred them up, made them start fighting against each other, as we see here in this record, and they was destroyed. And when you look at the boarding schools, it talks about after the wars and everything, they were brought into boarding schools. So what was the first thing that was stated in the boarding schools? And I'm paraphrasing, but they said to keep the man and destroy the Indian. So basically, destroy the identity of who they are and not knowing who they are themselves and who their brother is. So that this unity of these Negroes and these indigenous peoples never happens again. That's why they teach different slavers over the digits man and the Negro man, they did or did. And you have our own different cultures now, different things that were written, Willie Lynch, different things like that. Internal and external coercion that the Maroon autonomy was stifled. And mentions and hence of the Maroon society, it being ended, is actually stated in the indigenous boarding schools. And that's why it was established. To make sure that there's never unity and that this, what we're reading about what the Maroons did, never happens again. Now I want to get to the last one right here, y'all. Thank you for rocking with me. This last one right here is the museum that I was talking about as a record about the fact that, in fact, whitewashing did happen. So this museum began as the mosque in 1453 and later began to be known as different other things, but there are different writings that are in there. So let me read this here. During the Fourth Crusade in 1204, Latin Crusaders sacked many Byzantine buildings, including Hagia and Sophia. Why were they sacking the buildings? Many beautiful mosaics were removed and shipped to Venice after the Ottoman occupation of Constantinople in 1453. With the transition of the Hagia Sophia and mosque, the mosaics were covered, whitewashed, or plastered. There you have it. That's in the museum, and that's the source. Alright, y'all. Well, thank you for rocking with me. So I'm gonna say salute to y'all, to my people. I'm gonna say praise God, praise Yahweh. I say by Hashem Yahweh Shai, and hopefully this was just edifying for y'all, and hopefully y'all could take notes, and hopefully it's edifying for some things and stirring up, and hopefully other things that you were able to gain some things to put you in the right direction. All right, y'all. Peace.